Welcome to the Sensible Center podcast, where two middle-aged guys drunkenly talk politics and political reform. Grab an adult beverage and enjoy the show. Further information can be found at sensiblecenterpack.com. You can reach us at sensiblecenterpack@gmail.com or follow us on X at USASCPack. Hey there, Bob.
Hey, Kevin. Feels like it's been forever since we talked.
Yeah, it seems like it was like in May, but I don't even know if that's the case. Is it? Was it May?
It was. We definitely talked in May. It's been maybe 3 weeks, I'm guessing.
Wow. Well, happy Father's Day anyway. Belated Father's Day.
Hey, I appreciate that.
That was a couple days ago, right?
Yep.
So was there a big, the girls grill out on the barbecue for you? Get you some nice, some bourbon or scotch or something?
We had plenty of bourbon, and we hung out with some friends down the street who are in our old neighborhood, and they've got a pool, and so we just kind of hung out with the pool, and good conversation, good times. Maybe a little too much bourbon.
Well, that's good. There's no such thing.
Yeah, we spent all day on that grill, though. I'll tell you that. It was great.
Yeah, you're trying to beat the heat down there, huh? I guess like 90% of the country is like burning up at this point.
I had some sod laid, and as soon as the sod got laid, it turned to dry. It hasn't rained. It got real hot.
Oh,
so,
you
my
was
fault.
that out in the backyard?
No, it's on the side. They had to dig up some stuff out of the side and relay some sod. So, yeah.
You gotta give it some water then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you'll get some rain. I think we're expecting.
Yeah, I was thinking, when it starts to get this hot, you start to at least get some pop-up thunderstorms.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens.
So, I guess in the intervening time, we had both rulings on the Trump trial, guilty on all 34 counts. I think it was we did our closing arguments last time, right? I think
we did. Yeah, that was the last one.
That's what we did. So I think maybe the jury. Maybe the jury heard the podcast or something, and I swayed them. Is that possible?
That's what happened. Everybody's listening to this, aren't they?
That's right. It made it out there.
How could you not?
So I was kind of surprised by the ruling. I kind of thought Donald was a little taken aback. Maybe I thought they were a bit surprised. I would have figured there would have been one or two holdouts. I just didn't think that it would have been a clean slate. I thought it would have been a hung jury more likely than not.
There's a lot about this trial that I did not like and did not think was on the up and up. Some of that I think is just New York law and the way it is written. So you can't say things weren't fair because of the way New York law is necessarily.
Right.
I was reading that the judge, gave the jury an opportunity prior to them being selected, said if you don't want to be part of this trial, you can just go. So half the jurors walked out, right? Or the candidates walked out. So that's interesting to me right there, because then you've got people that are sticking around that, potentially they're sticking around because they want to do the right thing, or potentially they're sticking around because they've got other motives, or they're scared, that what's going to happen if they're part of the trial. That to me is interesting because I think you take some impartiality out right there.
Yeah, I always thought, have you ever been selected for a jury?
Multiple times, but
really? You've been on a jury?
Out. Oh, I'm sorry. No, jury
you've always been.
I've never been on a jury. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always been. I've gotten pretty far in like the questioning and the voir dire or whatever. Made it through several rounds, but then I always get kicked out for one reason or another, I think. But I always thought maybe it should just be sort of random because they should just pick numbers out of a hat. I just don't know if you could ever get. It's just a strange process.
Yeah, because you've got kind of both sides then.
Right, trying to sway it one way or another, right?
Yep.
Where if it's just random, hey, you're going to get some people with certain opinions, and you're going to get some other people, and you kind of just hope everyone follows. I think most people want to follow the law and listen to the judge and take the duty. I definitely would take it seriously and not come in with any bias, and it's our duty to follow the law. Like you said, New York has particular statutes and instructions and whatnot, and like it or not, that's what it is, and you kind of got to follow based upon the evidence and what you hear, make that decision. Um, I think most people want to do that and realize that's part of the process. I'm sure there are some that don't, but like you said, are you really going to find out about those people through a questioning process? If somebody's going to try to sway it one way or another, they're not going to. I don't think they're going to be that honest in the questioning.
Yeah, but there was just, that trial overall, you're never really going to convince me it was all completely on the up and up. There's, just even little things, right? And little things matter. The judge donated money, albeit a small amount. It was $35 to a pro-Biden, anti-Trump political operation.
Yeah, I don't put
It's
much
illegal.
weight.
It's illegal under New York law. That's where I put the weight. I don't care about the $35 or who he donated to. I care that it's illegal under New York law, and they.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I mean, if it is, then that will be obviously something that they could appeal on.
I think it should. Yeah, I think whether or not. Yep.
And we'll see whether that comes up in the appeal. I generally think that if it wasn't for Donald Trump, the case would have probably not been brought.
No,
And I do think that the same thing about the Hunter Biden case, which is another one that came up. I don't think either of those cases would have resulted in a full trial.
I disagree with you there, because generally people getting charged with the stuff that Biden got charged with, Hunter got charged with, are poor people who are in so much trouble they eventually get caught with another gun. You know what I mean? After they already been caught. And so that's the difference.
But I'm guessing if it's a first-time offense, they probably are able to plea it out.
Yeah. Generally. Yeah, I agree.
I don't think that's something that makes it to a jury trial if it wasn't Hunter Biden and the focus on that. And the same thing on Trump. And I can't imagine either of them will be seeing prison time. That would be surprising to me. If I would say Hunter would have a higher possibility. I'd be really surprised if this judge gives Trump.
Neither of them are going to get it. Neither of them will get it.
There didn't seem to be that much. I was trying to follow the media on the Trump trial. There didn't seem to be that much, quote unquote, celebrating, and I don't think anyone should be celebrating anything. I think it's a sad state of affairs. Any of these trials.
It seemed to be a big story for 2 days.
Yeah.
And then nobody's really even talking about it anymore. If I do hear it being talked about, it's being talked about in the sense that a lot of minorities are more in support of him now.
Yeah.
After the trial, which is, there's a lot you can dig into there.
Yeah, I mean, some of those polls, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. There's still a lot of time. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I didn't like that Michael Cohen kind of went around, and I know he appeared on MSNBC that night or something.
Yeah.
I would have liked that they would have declined an interview with him, maybe. Because I think, like I said, I think he's as dirty as anyone.
If he wasn't in prison, Scaramucci would have found his way around on the media circuit too.
No, I don't think Scaramucci's in prison.
Oh, I'm not Scaramucci. I'm sorry. The other guy, Avenatti.
Avenatti. Yeah.
Avenatti. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he would have been up. I'm surprised he didn't do it from prison.
He probably did try to get him.
Yeah. And you thought so. Here's my take on both of them. I think the juries. I kind of liked that. I think the juries took the job seriously and came to a ruling. It did show that no one is sort of above the law in both of these cases, right? I think technically the decisions were correct, based upon the information provided for both of them. So it kind of gave me, and I don't think you probably have the same feeling, but it kind of gave me pride or further showing the strength of our judicial system. But I don't necessarily know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think it more shows the weakness of our political system. I don't know about the judicial system. I mean, The problem is it all seems politicized to me. I know why do you even have judges that are running as Democrats or Republicans or
Well, that's
siding or
just,
aligning with them? And
I agree. I don't think judges should, but that's the system, right?
it is.
I agree that I don't like that political politicization of the judicial system. I think that becomes very problematic, and I think it's been that way, and but I think it just with every just with everything else, I think it's become more so in the last 10 or 15 years, right? Or it seems like it has. So, did Trump tweet out shortly thereafter, suggesting that when he wins, that he would pardon Hunter?
He did. Or it wasn't a tweet, it was True Social or whatever he's done on Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, he basically said that he would pardon Hunter because it was a violation of the Second Amendment.
There you go. And he kind of like made it seem like Joe wasn't a good father or something.
Yeah, he said Joe's not pretty much a terrible father. And,
Oh, you gotta love the Donald.
and he was trying to back him into a corner there too, of course, right? Because what he's basically saying is, he was trying to force Biden to take in a Second Amendment stance. And
Yeah, I mean it is kind of a unique situation that I think most people on the right would say, and I can't imagine that there's not hundreds or thousands of people who lie on those forums every day would answer the same question that might have a drug problem to get guns. And it does seem like there's other things that would apply there, either alcohol or, I mean, I guess
Yep.
the cannabis community was concerned with the ruling, and I think at the end of the day, if this makes it up through this Supreme Court, there's a chance that will get overturned. I'm guessing.
I
'Cause
think
it does
probably
seem like an unreasonable restriction on owning a firearm. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there are lots of restrictions out there, and I assume they're state by state. They're not federal. Or if you're drinking, you can't be carrying a gun when you're drunk, right?
Right.
Just like you can't be driving when you're drunk. So I mean, that'd be a logical next question, right? Um,
But this was lying on a form saying he's
yeah,
got an addiction. I didn't look up the form, but I thought that was what it was. Which, there's lots of different addictions that would affect your ability to use firearms.
yep. You can make the argument that a lot of the prescription stuff is
Yep.
just as bad.
Yep. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But speaking of Joe himself, in the last week or so, it seems like he's like aging right before our very eyes, right? I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
there's some accelerated.
I
I mean,
think you and I
clearly
have
the media is
differences.
focused and social media is focused on it more than ever, and that's part of the election thing.
I
But
think we had differences in opinion on how bad he was to begin with, because I think he's been bad since since he was elected.
I think
But
he's
yes,
been bad. I think
think
he's been bad, like gaffes and whatever, since he's been about 30 or 40. So to some extent, it's hard to tell because you've got this long history of him,
Yeah.
misspeaking and forgetting stuff.
but he
But
does seem to be
clearly,
aging by the minute.
he does. He needs what was it, that movie Benjamin Buttons or whatever?
Yeah,
Somebody's not needs to give him some of that juice or whatever, so he starts aging in reverse. I don't.
because he seems to be like it's not just word gaffes, although there's plenty of that. It's just the look on his face. He looks confused constantly, like he doesn't know where he is, what he's supposed to do. He doesn't really have a facial expression that says anything, which is just odd to me.
Yeah, I mean, clearly his handlers have not done. We've always kind of made the joke that it's a Weekend at Bernie's thing, and they're just kind of dragging him along, which I always find funny because he's got the sunglasses and whatnot,
Yeah.
and I
And
love
at
all
this
those.
point, he is. I mean, it's like, yeah, he turns around and somebody runs over and grabs him, tries to make it not look too obvious, but it's
Yeah, Obama was pulling his arm a couple
Yeah.
of days ago, right? I
right.
saw that. Like, come on, Joe, time to get off the stage. We can't stay here forever. So I partly blame it on his handlers, like, because he was over in France, and there was this long walk where he's walking next to Macron that was like, it reminded me of like a grandson walking his
Yeah.
grandfather. And Joe was just kind of very slowly walking. And I'm sure Macron was thinking,
Yeah, well, that's the
what the
thing.
heck do I do?
It's yeah, and you're at this point you're asking leaders of other countries to babysit the president, or in front. It's
Yeah,
concerning.
it's
He
concerning.
headbutted the Pope.
We shouldn't be laughing, but at some point you have to laugh. I mean, we both agree he shouldn't be running for president again.
No, I don't. I mean, it's sad to say, but there's a good chance that if he is elected again, he won't make it. It's just like I said, it's like he's aging by the minute.
Yeah, it's, and then there was that Juneteenth celebration video. Somebody should have been fired or shot, I think, for allowing him to participate in that.
Well, isn't that the press secretary's job? Is that her job to kind of dictate what he can and
Oh, yeah, well, you want to get into her. Uh, yeah, if our listeners haven't seen this video, I don't know how you haven't seen it, but look it up. Just kind of type in Joe Biden Juneteenth
yeah.
celebration, and everyone else is clapping and dancing, and even Kamala's husband was getting into it, and Joe's literally frozen. Uh,
Yeah, he's just not moving.
but
It's like,
half of those are fake. Right now, is that what we heard
yeah, so,
from speaking of the press secretary?
yeah. Karine Jean-Pierre, hope I pronounced her name correctly there.
I think Fox
We
just uses
stated
her
these are
initials now.
deep fake videos. They're not real. They're just trying to make the president look bad, and they're political hits. My question to her is, they're from different sources, different major news agencies, and they're all over the internet. There's hundreds of them. They're not fake. As a matter
What?
of fact, what I find the most funny about it probably is that if you watch any White House released 3-minute Joe Biden speech on anything, there's at least 20 cuts. You can see the camera cut, 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 cut. Those are fakes.
The stuff they're producing is
Yeah, the stuff they're producing is obviously cut. If you go out and look at any one of them, you'll see the videos cut repeatedly. It's funny, and it's just misinformation, fake news, if you want to call it that, coming straight from the White House.
well. I did see her. I did see that question and her answer, and she didn't specify which ones. So I think that gives them sort of an out. But clearly, there are. If the point was that the president isn't looking old or freezing in some of these, or
Yeah,
clearly there's enough of, like you said, there's enough of them out there that are clearly not fake. And I'm sure there are fakes out there, but I don't think that's kind of a bad answer, I think. But I don't know what else they could say
I
at this
think
point.
the next attacks you're going to start seeing, because the Democrats often do this, is they'll start to try to say Trump is, what you see out of Biden there with him falling apart. They're going to start to say, no, that's Trump. Our guy's perfectly great. They're just saying this to distract from how bad Trump is and how senile he is. Just watch. You're going to start to see a lot of that.
Well, there is part of that to it, right? I'm clearly this is part of the strategy and campaign to focus in on Biden's age. So, yeah, it's a little bit of the distraction. And unfortunately, the White House and the Democrats are not doing themselves any favor with how they're messaging and responding to it. That, like I said, his handlers and the people who are responsible for putting him in certain situations. I mean, we'll see. The
Which
debate's
brings me
next week,
to
right? The debate's next week.
yeah,
We're not too far away
into
now.
next week. It brings me to the point that not only is Biden not suitable for office, a lot of the people he's picked and put around him aren't either. I mean, they're like you said it. They're not doing a great job. But that's just my opinion.
No, I think they could be doing a better job with it.
But I
They
stand
they
by
never
also. I
seem
mean,
to.
I don't think Biden will be. I don't think he's going to be the candidate.
I don't think he's going to be there.
I can't see them letting him stay there.
All right, you're still holding out. Well, what are we?
Yep.
5 months, less than 5 months away now.
Yeah. So when is the convention? Is it July or August?
I think I looked up trying to get tickets to the Republican National Convention, and that what did Trump call it? A shit. He didn't call it a shitty city, did he? He called it something.
Something like that. Yeah.
I think he was
Milwaukee.
down there today. I think he was in Racine. He was
He
somewhere.
said he's
with,
staying there, and he has planned to stay there the whole time, not in Chicago. But yeah, he did call it that.
Yeah, I think the Republicans before the Democrats. So I think the Republicans late July, and the Democrats might be a couple weeks into August. So they're both coming up, and they're both, a couple hours drive from my house. So I tried to get tickets to the Republican. There wasn't. I went onto the host website, and unless I volunteered, I couldn't figure out how we could get a press pass. There wasn't any submission form.
Well, that would have been fantastic
Yeah.
to get, though.
Yeah, that would have been good. So I think like the late night shows or definitely the Daily Show is doing live shows. So I've tried to get tickets to those. I'm in the queue for those. So we'll see. I wouldn't mind going and at least to Milwaukee to see what's going on, since I don't. Even when I was in Chicago when last time they had the Democratic one, I don't think I ventured out to see what was going on.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're in D.C. and you sit in a bar, especially some of the more uppity places, and you just listen to the political conversation and banter, that's been going on there for 250 years
Yep.
or more. And so those are great opportunities for that, to just be sitting around and listening and getting in on some of these conversations. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, so I might, similar going to the Trump rally in Iowa and meeting Vivek, I might venture out sometime in July and see what's cooking in Milwaukee. See if I could get a feel for it. Huh?
He could be the next VP.
Vivek, my Nancy Mace thing I think is out. I think I was reading about her. I don't think she's gonna. I think he might pick a male. It'll be strange.
I kind of see it being Tim Scott or Vivek.
Really?
But we'll see.
They say J.D. Vance, I think, is moving up, and that Doug Bergstrom or the
Burgum,
the governor of North Dakota or South Dakota, one of those two.
Kristi Noem has South Dakota, doesn't she?
Yeah, I think she has South Dakota. I think Doug's from North.
Yeah.
If I was going to be a wagering.
I don't think Doug's charismatic enough.
No, he didn't come across. He came across decent in the debates, but I don't think he's. But then again, he selected Pence, and Pence was not what you would call charismatic either, right?
The thing is, though, I mean, normally a president doesn't want a very charismatic vice president because it's seen as a challenge to power, right?
Well, yeah.
But in this case,
but look at
there's
Trump.
going to be no second
anyone.
term.
Yeah, but he's a narcissist, so I can't imagine he would want to select anyone that could possibly upstage him. Even though he doesn't need to run for a second term. He's just going to stay. Right?
Yeah. No, he'll be done after this. I guarantee one of his kids will run.
Run? They're going to appoint him. Don Jr.
Don Jr.
Don Jr. So what are we drinking tonight before we get into...
I have got a store pick, Elijah Craig single barrel. It's pretty good.
Look at you. I am, again, working through my bar, and I discovered a honey Jim Beam. Real honey liqueur infused with Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
I would have thought it would have been bourbon infused with honey. You
No.
described it the opposite way, huh?
It's
How is it?
honey liqueur infused with bourbon. It is not bad. There was enough left in the bottle. I didn't see it on the shelves of when we visited.
No. I do like a honey bourbon. A lot of times you'll get a bourbon that they put in a barrel that honey was in, let it age a little longer. Those are usually pretty good. So I bet that's solid. I would try it.
They say the perfect mix of bourbon with subtle hints of caramel, oak, and vanilla. Enjoy as a shot or with lemonade over ice. Look at that. With lemonade over ice. It's only 70 proof, so
It's about right.
it says it
Not all you
contains
need.
caramel. It's tasty. It'll do the trick. We had some old fashions over the weekend. We did a Wisconsin Supper Club. If you ever make it up here, they got $4 old fashions. That's what they're known for. Pretty good. Got to
I
do the
like
brandy
those
when you're in
places.
Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those supper clubs and the brandy old fashioned. Yeah,
it's a good deal.
it's a culture up there, and I think anybody who hasn't experienced it is missing out.
Yeah, I like them. We'd like to discover new ones. We really like this one down in. It's a little past the Dells in Portage. It's always very crowded on a Friday or Saturday night.
There's a
So,
place up there too. It's like I think it's Prime Quarter. It's a steakhouse, one of those places where you cook your own steak.
oh yeah,
The place is good.
good stuff. Well, it's June, Bob, and we know June is the time that the Supreme the Supreme Court, the procrastinators of the judicial community, right? They wait until the last minute to issue all their rulings, right? They
Yeah,
hear cases all year, right? And they just can't get rulings out until June, which I never understood, right?
I never liked that.
Don't
If
they
you got
have
the ruling, you know
staff?
what it's going
Right.
to be. If it's printed up and typed up, and your opinion's formed,
And
let
the
us
big
have it.
ones they wait the longest on, right? So we still haven't heard about the immunity thing. I guess they have to. I mean, they've got only like a week and a half. I think they could kick one out on July 1st technically because of the holiday. I don't know how it works. Um, Whether they would get penalized if they turn it in late, but
Well, they
I'm
could leak
guessing
it.
next week sometime we're gonna hear whether we have a monarchical presidency where you can basically do whatever you want. I don't know where that one's going to come out. I think they're going to split the baby a little bit on that one. I think it's going to be confusing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do because we were having a conversation earlier. I don't know if it was when we had started the cast or not, right? But we know Roberts likes to kick the can as much as possible.
Yep.
So if he can prevent a ruling or setting precedent, I think he'll do that. But I think from listening to the questioning in that case as well, you can see that the judges saw a need, at least to some point, for presidential immunity, right? The question is where do you draw that line between
Right.
something being done because it needs to be done and something being done because you're protecting your power or worse?
Yep. It will be interesting. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be sort of a technical ruling because, like you said, Roberts, if he can somehow get something technical out of it, where he's not setting a strong precedent, but ruling in a narrow basis on the case. But this one might be tough to do that on. I don't know. It will be
Yeah.
interesting to read the opinion. But they did issue a couple other ones, and one that I thought was fairly interesting that came out was this bump stock ruling, which was a Trump era ban, right? I mean, Trump. I think it was an executive order. I don't.
I
Or was
don't
it
know if
put
it was
through?
an executive order, but
Was
he
it put?
definitely signed something.
So uh, I didn't. I don't remember hearing the case, but I kind of delved into it further because I read a little bit about the opinion. So this came up uh, during it was that Las Vegas shooting, right? The country music festival where the guy was shooting out of, I think it was the Mandalay Bay, and killed tragically like
Yeah,
60 or so people,
could have been worse.
and he was using a bump stock, which I wasn't quite familiar with. Deb and I kind of looked into it. She's like, "What is it exactly?" So basically, it's you take the stock of the gun and you there's a device that you kind of put on it that with the recoil it allows your if you hold your finger sort of at the trigger, it shakes it enough that you can rapid fire basically, right?
Yep.
So it's a modification. Automatic weapons are banned, right? In this, I
They
didn't
are.
realize that the actual ban came from the 1930s. So it was the National Firearms Act of 1934, and that goes back to organized crime and shot off shotguns and Al
Yeah, I'm kind of
Capone and
surprised that's held,
yeah,
considering everything.
I mean they've modified it, but the wording that they ruled on in regards to the trigger function came from that act.
I'm pretty sure people can still own tanks and cannons, right?
Yeah,
But
I
but
don't
not a but not a
a
machine
functioning
gun.
cannon. That's a good question. Why you got thoughts in your head?
Oh, I don't want one. There's not enough room over here.
Because I always I said to my lovely wife, I said, why would somebody need something? And she's like, well, when push comes to the shove and somebody's coming for your beans and rice, during the
Yeah.
zombie apocalypse, which
Yep.
appears we're heading for eventually, right? Uh, Now that I think somebody announced today that we're going to be 50 trillion in debt by 2050, and I was doing the math like, how old am I? And
We continue to send
like
money
20,
overseas.
that's 26 years, and then I added up to my age. I'm like, shoot, I might be around for that.
And this is going off on a tangent, but that's one of
Right.
the biggest issues I have with illegal immigration is we're spending a lot of money,
We
a
are.
lot of services,
You're right.
and more or less we're paying for them to have cell phones, we're paying for their lodging, we're paying for them to eat. When my grandparents came over on the boat, there was none of that. They got here and they had to find a job or they relied on family or whatever it happened to be, but there was none of this handouts from the government times what do we have now, 35 million. So that's yeah, I mean there's a lot of places that money needs to stop, but back to
Yeah.
bump stocks.
Back to bump stocks. With that little segue on immigration and the cost. So, I don't know. We haven't ever talked about this. So, the court came out with 6-3, and not surprising, it was the three liberal. Uh, they just happen to be female. There's one conservative. Barrett's the conservative female.
Yeah.
So it was 6-3 ruling, kind of along the lines that you'd expect. And I did listen to some of the arguments this week, and some of the questioning. Not surprisingly, I think. So, do you think what? I mean, just what's your take on? Should this be okay, or to me,
Here's the
I think
thing,
they
though,
didn't
yeah.
rule common sense wise. I like common sense rulings.
I don't know if it aligns with the fact that they haven't turned over that machine gun ban, right? So in spirit, this is that. And if that is illegal and it's going to be upheld or has been upheld by the court, then, it's a very fine line. That said, I tend to fully support the Second Amendment, and probably under the Second Amendment, that 1930s law should be overturned. I'll say this, though. I mean, okay, bump stocks, why do you need them? And I'm sitting here trying to imagine why you would need one. They can't make you more accurate if you're trying to hunt. It maybe provides a bit of a challenge during sport, right? You use one and you see if you can hit the target, 10 out of 10, whatever. I could see that being a challenge, like, video games and things are designed like that. So I could see in real life people wanting to do that. The question, why do you need them, though, has no relevance under the Second Amendment. So
For protection, right?
it's
So,
there's no way that can make you more accurate, right? I mean,
so to put this in number, no, I don't think when you're shooting that many bullets, I think accuracy becomes less important.
and it gets more difficult too if you start to overheat the.
Right.
Yeah,
the barrel.
the barrel. Thank you.
So, is my understanding, just as far as how many shots you could get off with some of these things, I think an automatic weapon, sort of military grade, I think you could do 800 to 900 bullets a minute. Um, with these bump stocks, I think it's somewhat less, but I think it could be in the 4 to 600 bullet a minute range. Um, I saw analysis of just kind of trying to figure out based upon the shooting in Vegas and kind of some of the forensic stuff how many bullets were coming in. So it's not quite a automatic weapon, but it clearly um, has that intent, right? But that's where the court kind of and you know, honestly, the reading of the law, they made the right call. I'd hate to say it, but they made the right call. But then you have to ask, they didn't know from bump stocks in 1934, right?
Right.
So is it the intent, I would say, was to make it illegal. But Congress hasn't done anything, right? They haven't said specifically this bump stock is illegal, right? They haven't made a law about it. So they can make a law tomorrow. And I'm sure it'll be challenged on constitutional grounds. But they also made a law about automatic weapons that have stood for 90 years, roughly, right? That nobody's won a challenge on. So I hate to say it, but I think it's in Congress's court. I don't like that the court doesn't look at intent. They they were looking at saying the function of the trigger. And so this was not an automatic trigger. The finger had to keep on pressing the trigger. It's just the bump stock makes it go much quicker because of the using the energy from the recoil to if you position it a certain way, you can
Yep.
the trigger functions.
Which still takes a lot of strength and control.
Yes,
But yeah.
they said, you have to be, that was part of it too. Like you said, there is kind of a challenge. People who are very good at it could do it much quicker than people who can't, right?
Yep.
So there is a skill to it, and I guess you could say whether you're a sportsman, that's something that you can perfect, just like your golf game. Not drawing an analogy between a
Yep.
bump stock and
Right.
a 5-iron.
You got to imagine that the sales of these things are about to take off, go through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, I've had mine just sitting here in cold storage. So
Yeah. Kind of with your gold.
I've been, all my gold bars and my beans and rice are in the other room,
Yeah.
and so I've been trying to work on getting my bump stocks back, because I'm a law-abiding citizen. So when the ban went through, I put
Right.
them in cold storage. Now I'm reapplying them to my weaponry.
Like back when gold was illegal, you got rid of all your gold, right?
Yep. So, like it or not, I think.
That was an age joke.
Yeah.
If you didn't catch that.
That's right. So, like it or not, I think the court made the right ruling. I don't like that they rule on, they're constructionalists, these guys. What does it say? And so that's how they look at things. If it's not written, they'll argue over a comma or a word. And I still think there's interpretation to some of it, but I guess their interpretation of the words are what matter, especially if there's 6 of them versus 3. So I don't imagine Congress will, in an election year, pass a law to anything to do with guns. Do you? I don't.
No.
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 They're not going to
No.
pass a law for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
Unless
probably.
it has to do with giving more of our money away to overseas wars.
Yep. A couple of other things that came up was the Biden administration putting out, I don't know whether, I guess it would be through the EPA probably, or does the EPA put out Who puts out mileage per
Yeah, it's
gallon
that might
standards?
be transportation. Could be the EPA or transportation. I can't remember
Is
which
it
one it was.
Buttigieg?
It
Is
could
it
very well could
is
be.
it Mayor Pete? He's doing this to us. So I know you probably weren't too happy, but I think they're making it 50 miles per gallon average, like in, I think it's 2030 by 2031. So this is only applies to American manufacturers, right?
Yep.
So we're putting our manufacturers at an advantage to the rest of the world by requiring them.
Well, if they're made here though, right? So if you're making a Nissan here, it's still an American manufacturer. It's it's the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. So does that fall under Buttigieg?
Sounds like something that would fall under,
Yeah, I would think
since
so.
it has transportation in the name.
Yep.
Yeah, EPA probably does emission standards and so you don't like the government getting involved in this at all, right?
No, it's dangerous.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous for the economy overall.
What you talking about, Bob?
First,
Dan-
first of all, they're picking winners, right?
Picking winners.
They're picking winners.
So how are
influencing
they
winners.
picking winners?
Well, for instance, Tesla, right? Tesla's already there. Let's just say that they're telling Ford, you have to do this. You're going to do this, and if it's outside of the bounds of what other car companies want to do, they're at a disadvantage. Second of all, if the initiative fails, or it's replaced by a better initiative, such as hydrogen, for example, who's going to be left holding the bag? The businesses, right? So these businesses do these massive changeovers because of this government regulation, and then after the massive changeover, that electric vehicles don't even win, which honestly is truly what I believe is going to happen.
So this would apply
Regardless
to
of whether or
electric
not-
vehicles because it's a miles per. I don't know how. I guess they must convert it. Is that right? Because it's MPG, so it's gallons, which
Right.
is gas, right?
It's only gas. It has nothing to do with electric vehicles because
So
they're already
so
there.
so electric vehicles are excluded from this standard.
Well,
so this isn't a
they're not
portion that-
excluded from it, but they meet it.
So do they somehow calculate? Because they're saying of your whole fleet, right? I mean, they're not saying every car has to have a 50 per gallon
No, it's your fleet.
standard.
It's
So
your
it's your fleet average.
But
So they must calculate the EVs in there somehow, right?
But
and
if
that
you're
average, they
selling,
must-
if you sell 5 EVs for every 100 Sierras, your balance is off, right?
But isn't more miles per gallon a good thing
For
for everyone? I mean, it makes. They said with this standard, the average consumer
Where's your-
will save $600 a year. It's
on-
money
on-
in our
they'll
pocket,
save
Bob.
$600 a year.
It's money in my pocket.
How much more is a GMC Sierra today than it was a year ago? That's got to be more than $600.
That's irrelevant.
How much more will it be 5-6 years from? No, it's not irrelevant because there's less capacity to make these gasoline vehicles if you're switching capacity over to make the electric vehicles or the hybrid vehicles, right? And then you're going to have all that factory space. If these vehicles fail,
But don't we want to save the environment? Don't we want to get off? I mean, everyone's talking
why
about
shouldn't the
having
market
oil
decide to
and-
do that, though? The market can decide to do that. When the market gets there, that's fine. But the government changing laws. What if the government had changed the laws
the market.
to protect horse and buggies when the vehicle was made because the vehicles were bad for the environment? Ford never would have happened, right? You could pick any of those examples.
So
Government
you'd rather
generally
have
doesn't
gas
make good
prices
decisions.
go up, and then people will demand more fuel-efficient cars,
If the market dictates the gas,
or
prices
they'll
going
just
up. Yeah.
complain and point the finger at Biden for higher gas
Well,
prices.
again, let's just say
Right?
hydrogen ends up being the solution, and it's not electric vehicles; it's hydrogen vehicles.
You're big on hydrogen.
I'm just throwing that out there, right? That's one example. There's actually another story in the news lately, and this is very early on, but a third party of engineers has been able to generate force using what they call asymmetrical electrostatic pressure.
I know you sent me that article,
Right?
and it was
Yeah.
too technical for me.
So
I didn't
in
quite
short,
understand.
they're able to generate thrust without fuel. And just as most relevant, really their field is aerospace, right? So they're trying to find ways to get rockets into space without any fuel, or at least less fuel. And then obviously once you get into space too, if you can use this, you basically have a constant source of movement without the friction once you're up there. So that's an example that could potentially be brought over to cars. But all I'm saying is there's an infinite number of possibilities that are going to be more successful than electric. And the government forcing people to put more of their eggs into a single basket not only hurts innovation, it makes it more difficult and more expensive for people to get around in an already inflationary government. And if that solution fails, it's going to be worse.
I'm very suspicious of the recent pushback against electric vehicles. I don't know if I've stated that here before, but it kind of smells of something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you had two, right? But you don't have one anymore. Why?
The crazy thing is that they're presenting, at least they're presenting it that there's a consortium pushing towards electric versus the status quo has a lot of power to crush electric, and that's what's happening. It's happened before, and now I think electric gained a lot of momentum that maybe people didn't see it was going to happen, and now there's a lot of pushback. At least that's my opinion. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it seems like there's a lot of vested interest in keeping gasoline cars, and so now they're talking, well, electric might not be it. It might be hydrogen or whatever. Why are we picking electric cars? And you can't drive your car too far. And what about the charging stations? And I mean, I had an electric car 10 years ago, and then another one before there were a lot of charging stations, and I somehow managed.
But you don't have one anymore.
I'd love to buy another electric car. My wife doesn't like electric cars. She likes electric cars, but as long as it has a gas option, which I somewhat agree with, because
that seems more reasonable to me.
That's sort of, but they've never made one with long range with gas, I think. Plus, it's splitting the baby a little bit, because to have a gas combustion engine and an electric, whatever solid state engine, I think it adds a lot of cost and extra stuff to it, but I think that's why they're kind of hard to find.
I don't have a problem with electric cars. I mean, you either said or implied earlier that I don't like them. It's not bad. You get me as far in an electric car as I can get on a tank of gas, and I can charge it the same amount of time I can fill it up. I'll get one.
Okay.
I'm not going to sit and wait.
But how do we get there,
or more to charge my car?
How do we get to that point if
that's up to the market, not the government?
Yeah.
The government can't do it. The government is hurting other industry and people through their regulation.
I think history shows that to kickstart a change, you sometimes need a nudge in the right direction. And I would consider this a nudge. Now you could argue whether
I would consider your nudge to be lobby money coming from those who favor electric vehicles at the expense of those producing the legacy type vehicle.
Well, I would say that's
the nudge. It's got
the
nothing to do
lobby
with what's
money
best for
behind
people.
The gas and oil industry is much more than
that's
the
good.
one,
that gets back
the
to
one
where
behind the charging stations.
That's where we began, right? Let's get rid of the lobbyists and see what happens. Have we done that yet? Have we even got rid of one?
I don't think on some things as large as this, the market finds an easy way out, because I do think the legacy pushes because people have vested interests in certain things, and so it's not like if people demanded stuff that they would be getting it, right?
I don't know. I mean, we don't have too many typewriters anymore. We don't have too many landline telephones anymore. I mean, stuff goes away when there's an alternative for it.
You don't think there was government support and subsidies behind cellular technology or Fiber.
There weren't laws created that said you can't have a landline anymore.
I mean, I got fiber delivered to my home, and I think that was through a government program because the economics of it didn't work, right? I live in a fairly rural area, and running all that fiber out here wouldn't have happened.
But did they
So is that a
ban
good thing or not?
Did they mandate that your internet has to be a certain speed?
No, but once the
Well, that's what
government
they're
gets
doing here,
involved in
though.
it, I bought the fiber. I upgraded, and I think that's a good thing, right? If
You
the
don't think
government wasn't involved, I'd be using a satellite dish to get 25 megabits a second.
you don't think at some point in time somebody would have come out? I mean, you'd be yeah. I mean,
No, I don't think so.
Starlink's pretty fast. Starlink's probably a pretty solid alternative, right? I don't know what the speeds are, but it's probably nearly a gig, if not more, right?
Oh, sure. If you want to pay whatever, what do you think? What do
I
you think
don't.
the cost of that is?
I bet it's very reasonable.
Mm.
Let's check. I'll see if I can do a quick on the fly Starlink estimate.
So I guess my point is, I don't know what the right number is, but I'm always a believer in government nudging. I don't like I don't like forcing people, but I do think the markets do need to be nudged at times. And I definitely know we're probably one of the economies that does it the least, and our foreign competitors do it more than us. When you consider, I mean, a lot of them have nationally owned auto companies or utilities or whatnot. We are some of the freest markets in the world, and I would say unregulated markets in the world. I don't think there's a perfect free market.
Starlink is
And
$120 a month. Speeds are between 50 and 150 megabytes per second.
well, I'm getting 300 for $60 now.
Yeah, so that's cheaper.
It is. Um, so I think we disagree on this one, in regards to trying to. You're saying
What?
the people should just demand higher gas cars, and somehow the entrenched interest
No,
that
I'm
somehow
saying I'm not
GM would
saying that at
somehow
all.
GM would start producing them, even though it might cost them at the end of the day.
I'm
I just
saying
don't
yeah.
see that necessarily
I'm
happening.
saying the market needs to create an alternative without the government harming the alternatives. I'm not even saying right now, even though I believe it, that the government shouldn't subsidize alternatives. I'm saying you shouldn't harm alternatives, right? That's what I'm saying.
I don't think they're picking
And
a
if the
winner.
states want to do it, let them do it,
I
but
think
not the
they're
feds.
just saying that your fleet should have a 50. I'm sure if they came out with hydrogen and they were more fuel efficient, then they would meet these standards. I don't think they're picking a technology winner. They're just saying you need to produce more fuel efficient cars. Just like their standards for your refrigerator.
Why
And your,
doesn't the government come out with laws that they need to produce more efficient agencies?
well, Bob.
I mean, seriously, I think that would be fair. Maybe I'd loosen up a little bit. If you're going to demand more efficient companies, then you need to demand more efficient government. And once you produce that more efficient government, then the government the company laws take effect.
All right, I can't argue with you there. I do think there's room for better efficiencies in our government. Speaking of efficiencies, now Trump's been starting to talk about taxes, right?
He
He's
has,
thrown out some weird stuff in the last week.
and he's halfway there with this one. But I'll let you go.
You're the tax guy. Which one do you want to talk about? I'll talk about the tips ones first, right? He's thrown
Yeah.
out the no tax on tips, which I don't know where that comes from, right? You think he was just out, at one of his properties and was talking to one of his servers or something. I don't know where this came from, right? But the Donalds has said he would. I don't know if he's promised to not tax tips, but to me
Trying to
that's
grow his base. But
to
yes,
me that's
that's what he
strange.
said.
I don't understand the logic of it, other than he's trying to appeal to people in the service industry, right? Where's the
No,
logic in not taxing tips? I don't.
well, first of all, a tip is a gift, right?
Oh, it's a gift. It's not income.
It's not income.
Really?
It's a gift. Well, it's income in the eyes of the government.
So if I'm working for my employer and I get a bonus because I do a good job, that's a gift? Because that's the same thing, right?
Generally, and I
You're-
can't speak for all companies, but generally a bonus has something to do with performance goals, right?
Performance, right? And
Yeah.
so, how is
And they're
You're not
tied to
gifting.
business objectives.
I'm not going
But I
to
like
a
where you're going.
restaurant
Actually, I would like my
and
bonus
get-
to be tax free.
a gift would be giving money to somebody who doesn't serve you, like the waitress who's serving the table next to you, and you give them $10, right? That's a gift, right? Am I wrong? That would be a gift.
You're not wrong. That would be a gift, but
Okay,
I
so-
kind of see a tip as a gift as well.
The service,
not
the
really
service is
income.
waiting on me. It's not income. So you don't think it's income, really? Wow.
Well, they're dependent on it to live because
You've always had this viewpoint that
I used to.
well, I'm
deliver, I
dependent.
used to deliver pizzas.
I'm dependent on the salary my company pays me too.
I would bet that when more cash and less credit was used, people kept a lot more of their gifts than they do today when people are gifting on credit cards, right?
Well, I would
And it's
agree that
recorded.
they reported less of their income than
Yeah.
which I would consider a tax cheat, but I don't think I've ever received a tip. So maybe if I did, no, I wouldn't. I would still view it as income because I'm performing a job and I'm getting paid.
By your
for the
employer.
job
You're
I'm
being paid by
performing.
your employer.
I'm being paid under minimum wage, $2 or $3 an hour by my employer. And so I would be doing that job
So are you saying
if I didn't receive.
are you
Would I be
saying
doing that job if I didn't receive these gifts?
maybe?
I wouldn't be doing that job, right?
Are you saying that when you go eat at the local supper club and you leave a tip, are you considering yourself the employer of the individual that you're tipping?
I'm
Because if so, you
paying-
should be paying their Social Security and workman's comp taxes and all that, right?
I am paying for their service. Yes, I am.
So
Absolutely.
you're their employer.
I
So
never
should you be
consider it
paying-
a gift.
Should you be paying all the other taxes that an employer should pay?
I mean,
Needs to
we're,
pay
we're
it.
if we want to talk about tips, we're one of the few
Countries that do that.
that
yeah.
that do it, especially how we've done it now, which
I
has
gave
really
an
gotten out of
American style
control.
tip on a big meal in Europe one time and had my expense report looked at a little close.
Because why is that, Bob? Because they pay their employees. So,
But again, Kevin, I'm all for that. If you want to, if McDonald's wants to pay their employees whatever they want to pay them, well, McDonald's is a terrible example. You don't tip at McDonald's. Well, some people might nowadays, but go to your local diner. If they don't accept tips whatsoever, I think it would be a better world.
I don't think the Donald knows what he's doing, but he might actually be forcing these people to pay more taxes because it's going to. I think this country's ready to do away with tips. In which case, the employer will be paying the full boat, and people will have to report it. I never understood why that wouldn't be the case, and clearly the rest of the world has gotten on that boat years ago, and we still sort of do it this way, which is kind of crazy. Maybe the servers will like it more because it'll
I don't know. I think there's places where servers probably make a whole lot of money off tips. You just think about like Broadway down here,
definitely.
where you've got people in and out and it's packed.
So you're fine with them
16 hours
reporting
a day, and
like if they made, some nice places, they probably could make. I don't know. I've read books on servers. They could probably make $100,000 a year. A very nice restaurant.
Yep.
If you're a
Probably
good
more.
server,
probably
right?
more. Yeah.
So you're fine with that all being gift income.
I am.
that they pay no taxes on that. Well, you don't want anyone to pay taxes.
Those people are eventually going to pay taxes on
I just think
the
that,
stuff they buy, right?
well, so do I. I just don't think just because we have an insane system on service that restaurants pay their people low wages. I don't even know what the history is and why this actually happens here versus what happens in the rest of the world. But no one would be working for those low wages. So that's why I don't think it's a gift, because a gift is something that's not necessarily expected. And here we're sort of expected, right? If you didn't give them a certain percentage,
They'd look
they would
down on
think
you
right. And that's how you would
and
look
might
down
recognize
on
you
somebody.
next time they come into
Right.
come in to eat there. Yeah.
Right, because we all know that they count on that as their income.
Yep.
Whereas a gift is something over and above to me. So I'm surprised you don't think it's So we didn't even talk about why Trump would even consider this, but I don't think it's going to get anywhere. But I just thought it was different. We could go into
Well,
the
I
other
think
thing.
the thing about Trump is he's looking at it as how do I expand my base, and he's really focusing on the less fortunate, the people that are making less money, which generally servers and that type do,
Yep.
as a new base, and it's worked to some extent, and this is an extension of that, right? I don't know how many hundreds of thousands or millions of service employees there are in this country, but there's a lot, and that's a lot of votes, and I think that's what it comes down to.
I mean, our economy is largely a service economy right now.
Yep.
So there is a big base, but I don't understand how
It'd be difficult
that
to
gets
do
put in the tax
unless
law.
you get rid of all income tax.
Yeah, because I don't know how you would ever be able to qualify that and make sense to people that.
Yeah.
Why am I paying taxes on my income and somebody else isn't not?
Yep. Yeah,
paying?
and well, again, it's just like people who when they wanted to do, and they've been doing it anyway, that paying off college kids' student loans. Why are you doing them and not me?
Yep.
And
I
it's
agree
the
with
same
that
sort
too.
of thing, and I can understand that point of view, but I also think a tip is a gift.
All right.
And there it is. And unless
Good
you're
thing
paying
you're not-
their Social Security tax and the employer's tax and everything out, you're not their employer, right? Are you giving it out of the good of your heart? Because you don't have to give that.
But there's
You
lots
cannot
of things reported as income that wouldn't be subject to those taxes either, right? I mean, there's
Like,
lots of forms of income, like interest, like dividends, like
well, that's different though.
Like-
Those aren't gifts. Those are
all those are not
just like a bonus, right? Your bonus is similar to a dividend or interest, more so
To me-
than a tip.
All right.
Yeah. So the other side of it. All right. So Trump said that he wants to get rid of income tax as a whole.
So he's got you there, right?
No, I love it.
I love it.
I do. So
Now that I'm not working, I
his
I have
plan
less of a care for that.
his plan was to use tariffs, right? And that's a fair point that you just made. But let's kind of start. Trump's idea was no more income tax. We'll get our income through tariffs, things like that. I personally don't like tariffs because I'm kind of a free market oriented individual.
But isn't that the way we used to do it, right? I mean, I think before the income
We did,
tax only
and we had a
came up
much
in,
stronger manufacturing.
1913 or 1914 or something like that.
Yep.
I mean,
And
we
we
used
grew
to.
up of it.
I mean, the big job used to be the guys who collect duties, right? I mean, going back to the Revolution, that's kind of how the Stamp Act and the import tax on tea and paper. I mean, they used to tax everything as it came through.
So what about you do sales tax, but not tariffs, right? You get the money through sales tax, because then it's truly based on consumption. So if you have less money to spend and you buy less things, you're going to pay less taxes.
So going back to the imports, you're not on board with that.
I
You think
might
that will mess
be
things
somewhat
up?
on board with that in the sense of you charge the consumer for it, than I would you charge, I don't know, China for it the minute it comes, or the company for it the minute it comes into the country. But generally, no, I don't think I even like that, because what you're doing is you're robbing the consumer of choice,
Well, you're
and
definitely
you're raising
fair,
prices artificially to favor one over the other. So I think you just do a flat across the board.
but you're favoring local domestic industry, right? I mean,
You are,
tariffs are basically on imports, right?
but you're
And we
doing
have
that
a
at
we
the
have a
expense of the
huge,
consumer, because if you want to buy a TV,
but we have huge
if
trade
you,
deficit, right? We're making the rest of the world rich. Right. So I think that gets us into his America First. We're being ripped off by the rest of the world. So rather than have them dump our products, we're gonna tariff them so they're on a level playing field with what we could produce here.
which is
Uh,
exactly what Biden just did with electric vehicles. Yeah, the problem is when you artificially raise prices, you artificially raise prices, and now instead of spending $1,000 for my TV, I have to spend $1,300 for my TV, whatever it happens to be, right? Whatever it
yep.
is you're buying, because there's going to be less of these foreign TVs coming into the country, which means there's less alternatives. Therefore, the American-made ones are going to increase in price to eventually match foreign alternatives anyway, right? Of course, there's other
Or we
things like
produce some more
quality and
or we produce some more American TVs and we become more efficient at producing TVs and the price goes down, right?
yeah, but you can't be more efficient at producing everything. You got to have
Why?
your
We're
winners and losers.
America,
There's not enough.
USA,
There's not enough
USA,
resources for that in
US.
any country, and
What,
naturally, some people are better producers at certain things.
Bob? When we're great again, we can produce anything we want. Don't you understand?
All right, so
We're
I'm not.
America. America, get on board, Bob.
I don't like tariffs, generally speaking. I would take tariffs over an income tax, absolutely.
But you do realize tariffs and sales taxes are very regressive taxes, right? Because the people on the lower end of the scale spend all their money. They live paycheck to paycheck, right? So they're spending 100% of their income. Whereas
If you're making more
those
stuff in
making
America, those
more,
people are making more income.
oh, see, now you do like us making stuff in America.
Oh, I absolutely do like us making stuff in America, for sure. I'm all for that.
Well, they're making more money until the robots take over their job, right?
And the AI, yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, they're just going to be paid.
It becomes a whole nother conversation. I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
So, I mean, in theory, yes, you would. If we're producing stuff here, there'll be more jobs. But I would think with automation and where we're going, that maybe that will not long term. Short term, it might help, but I don't think long term. But you like similar sales tax is pretty regressive too. I think tariffs and sales tax will benefit the rich more than the poor because of the fact of who spends a majority of their income, where a rich person puts it in the bank, puts it in investments, and they're not going to be taxed on that income. So if they don't spend it, then it's tax free, right? Until they spend it. Europe and whatnot, they do value added tax, and there's other ways to do that. Um, I, I'm not married to an income tax. I just
Yeah.
know that
I don't
some
like
of these
value
other,
added tax either.
I know that about roughly 50% of this country doesn't pay any income tax, and they're not all rich. No, I mean they don't have enough income to pay taxes, and then the other, people who don't pay taxes are the ones that are super rich. So it's really the middle people that pay most of the taxes, I think, in this country, and some of the rich too. But I think they figure their way out of things better.
The IRS costs $16 billion a year, which in the scheme
Uh-oh.
of things, it doesn't sound like much, right? But if you could get rid of the IRS, that's $16 billion in savings there.
You think they're going to save? I think we should have more. I think we should have more tax enforcement.
Well, if you don't have income tax, you don't need it.
Well, I'll agree with that.
Unless
You'll
people
need
are
something to collect taxes.
bypassing sales tax through black market sales and things, which could happen, right? As things get more expensive due to tax, I guess you could have that happen. You'd have some need for some taxing agent or agency there. But
I think generally you want smaller government and lower taxes. I think that works hand in hand with your theory. So
think about the money people will save reporting their taxes every year too. I mean,
and if we had a balanced budget amendment, then that would work, right? You'd starve the government. Unfortunately, tax cuts have led to deficits, right? I mean, it's
spending has left the deficit.
I think it's
not
both,
tax
Bob.
Cuts.
I think it's both.
You
You
can't
can't have one without the other, right?
you can't. You're not losing something that was never yours.
Oh, Bob. Of
That's
course
ridiculous.
it's theirs.
Stop spending. That's all they got to do.
No.
Stop inflating.
I think it's both. You just think it's one. I think you have to raise revenue and cut spending. I think you need a little bit of both. Well, we'll get off taxes. One last thing, and we were gonna talk about abortion tonight, but I don't think we're gonna have time for it. I did read
It's going to
a
be a
book.
running gag at this point.
I did read a book, and I sent you over since our last podcast, called "America's Cultural Revolution: How the Radical Left Conquered Everything" by Christopher Rufo. I think I saw this guy on Fox or something, which inspired me to read the book. And just kind of to get a brief overview, and if people want to read it, I think it's kind of an interesting theory, and we'll get into a little bit. We won't talk too long on it. But the theory is that this guy proposes that we were going through a cultural revolution in the 60s, right? We all remember everything, the turmoil of the 1960s, and particularly he focuses on both the sort of political revolution. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you ever heard of the Weather Underground, Bob?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was actually a documentary that a family member did that was nominated for an Oscar. If you want to look it up, it's great. I think it is called just the Weather Underground. It's a documentary about that organization, and they were into kind of a violent. I mean, they did bombings.
Yeah, they were not. I don't look at them as good people at all, but
no,
I just want to qualify. There is a Weather Underground website as well, which is actually pretty good for weather reporting, especially in winter storms.
Not the same.
Not the same. Don't want to confuse them. Yeah.
Don't want to confuse them. But yeah, I mean, that's this Bill Ayers and these other. It's actually kind of a little bit centered in the Chicago area. So they believed in a violent revolution, a little bit of Marxist, socialist tendencies, kind of moving this country in that direction, anti-capitalism, anti-establishment, which was kind of in the spirit of the 60s. And then you had the civil rights movement in the 60s, and you had the Black Power movement with the Black Panthers. Again, they believed in somewhat. Martin Luther King was into, nonviolent resistance, peaceful resistance, and the Black Panthers, and Malcolm X early in his career believed in more violent. And there's a debate over how do you get, and a lot of the Black Lives Matter stuff and the stuff we've seen in recent years, there's that debate whether you need violence or looting or rioting to get people's attention, right, on issues, rather than just put the sign up and get the bullhorn and march or do encampments. Do you need really to get people's attention to be violent? I don't think that works to the benefit, but I think there's been arguments over the years. Anyway, so the 60s, primarily because I think they took the violent path, and they lost the public by doing that, and also because Nixon became president and he sort of cracked down on a lot of that. You think of Kent State, you think of some things like that. You think of Hoover with his enemies list, and I think they cracked down on a lot of these things. So that movement failed. And this book posits the theory that the movement didn't this leftist movement didn't disappear. It went into our institutions. So it first went into academia, right? Uh, because some of these people involved were academics. They started to get within universities. They had adherents that became professors and then administrators, and this is how we've seen this leftward shift within our, and we're talking about it today with the, even today with the Hamas movements and all this critical race theory that's being taught, and you can even say all the gender issues that were now appearing, that this has been since the 60s, that it's been building up all over these years, and now we're reaching the peak of it within our institutions. And this is kind of how the left has taken it over, that it's actually a strategy that started in the 60s and then went within our institutions, both academia, media, the deep state within our government, and
Yeah, but so what are we specifically talking about here, though? What is it?
everything that the right is fighting against. I mean, you could say it's the wokeness factor, right? That came through the critical race theory, which is another talking point on the right, right?
I'd argue that a lot of the projection from the institutions at this point is more virtual signaling, so they can get away with some of the stuff that you argue is happening, which is like not paying taxes and monopolizing an industry and not acting in the best interest of anybody but that organization.
I think he the author mentions that in this book, that a lot of the corporate, I mean, you're talking the DEI stuff, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Yep.
That corporations have developed. You think it's window dressing, and I don't think he disagrees with that from the corporate standpoint, that a lot of corporations have kind of said, well, it's a tax we have to pay. We have to make it look good. Otherwise, we're going to get protested or we're going to get canceled or whatever.
And
I sort of agree with that.
I'm not saying that diversity isn't good and organizations haven't embraced it like wholly and intently. That's a good thing. I'm saying a lot of this kind of extreme DEI stuff is just smoke signals, in my opinion.
You're saying across the board, you don't believe in like colleges and universities that
colleges and universities are a bit different because they're completely run by these exact liberal, I'll call them pseudo intellectuals that you're talking about, that based from the 60s and all this. I mean, but businesses are different, right? Businesses exist to make profit. Well, these universities kind of exist to just make money, if that makes sense. Organizations make things. Universities are producing money out of thin air.
So I think we're totally on the same base.
Yeah.
I think corporations, and I'm sure you're exposed to it within where you work, and I was exposed to it, and we'd have these trainings and whatnot, and you'd see things, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, towards this movement. Some of it might have been sincere. I think some of it was they felt like they needed to do this, right?
Yeah.
But as far as, so outside of corporations, and here's my take before I read this book. I think the right needs cultural issues, because I think and I'm not defending what the Democrats have done either. I have issues with that. But I think from a political standpoint and positioning standpoint, I think the right likes to attack on cultural issues. I think it was abortion, guns, things like that, free speech, because I think they've abandoned their core conservative fiscal small government, especially in the last 20 years, right?
Yeah. They
So I think
pretend they're still there,
I,
but they're not.
I don't think people buy that. So
No.
I think they've lost that, which I think is bad for our system in general, right? Because I like that alternative. I think that has to be a part of our system, and so I think they raise the cultural aspect. So I was always, well, they're positioning the Democrats as these elitists, these woke, the gender issues, the deep state, the media, the left turning media. And so I've always said, well, especially since abortion has swung their way, so they've kind of lost that as an issue. That now this round they're bringing all that up. So I always thought of it as talking points. And so I read this book to say, okay, what is the theory behind this? And I think this guy has gotten some traction in the community in regards to this kind of theory. And I think it's interesting. I think it's plausible, I guess. I am continually surprised on how ingrained some of this thing is with it, especially in our academic institutions. I think they might have lost their way. The more I investigated, and because I'm not part of a campus, I don't know what goes on, but you see things, you hear things, and you're like, really, has it kind of gone down that path? And it appears like it has more than not. So I give some of this credence, even though I do think of it maybe a little bit it's oversight. I mean, even give statistics like how many people in academia give to the Democratic Party. I mean, versus the Republican Party, and it's very swayed one way, right? Same thing with the government. I didn't research the numbers, but he's saying that the left is kind of taken over our institutions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Okay. And I'm more open to that idea than I was before I read the book.
The problem the main problem I have that there too, and I feel like the left is becoming less diverse within itself, or at least more afraid to speak up against the dumb ideas or the bad ideas, right? Because generally speaking, liberal ideals from 50 years ago, pretty reasonable. The strongest liberal ideals you hear today are less reasonable, in my opinion.
And I think that's kind of what Bill Maher and Barry Weiss, and I think that's part of that pushback against where it's taken. So I think, getting down to it, I think both parties have lost their way, right? Which I think is part of why we're seeing the dynamics within our political system kind of fall apart. The Republicans have lost their way on their conservative, small government, small spending, and the Democrats have sort of lost their way on the cultural side of things, right?
And I think that starts to breed some of the thoughts that it's somebody else really running the show, not either party.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know who would be running the show. Do you have a suggestion on who's running the show, Bob? Elvis?
Yeah,
Is Elvis
no, I
still
would
alive?
say, yeah, I would say the bureaucrats are running the show.
The bureaucrats, all right.
The lifetime bureaucrats. People have been in there 30, 40, 50 years, right? The nameless appointees, that's where I think it's at.
And they're controlling everything.
And I don't mean like in the movies, like puppet master sort of thing. I mean, generally they've molded things to kind of fit a plan, and it's just like any other machine, big machine, big organization that's running. It's hard to change. You go on in this one direction, and it's more difficult to stop and say, hey, is this right? What are we doing? And there's a lot of money in it as well. So there's a lot of people making a lot of money.
I don't know how much. I don't know how much there's money and bureaucracy. But I do agree that money probably is controlling the show. People who have it. Um, I do. I mean, that's a fairly simple answer, but we are in an economy with great disparity in wealth, and I do think our government has been a bit captured by, and I think that's partly why the Republicans have strayed because they've been captured a little bit by whatever interests, right? Um,
Yep. The lobbyists.
yep. Well, there we are. I think we've covered enough for tonight. We've run the gamut, I would say. We'd love to cover abortion, right? No, I didn't mean that.
Not a
Um,
topic I'm looking forward to, exactly.
no, but I think it's an important, and I think we both have varying views on that. But I think we probably have more in common than we actually think. That's why I think it's probably an interesting thing to discuss because it's one of those issues that I think a lot of people have a common sense opinion on, and I think the politics of it makes it much more difficult to come to reasonable conclusions that a lot of people would support. And they, just like immigration, I think it's being used by our political system to divide us rather than unite us, which is the point of this podcast. So we're into unity, Bob, right?
We're all one.
We're all one. Peace and love.
That's right.
Peace and love. Well, have a good remainder of the week. Try to stay cool down in the heat zone.
If you
Do
ask
some
my
pool
kids,
time.
I'm always cool.
Do some pool time. Are they out? They're out of school, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they're
they're out of
footloose.
school.
They're footloose and fancy free.
Yes, sir. They're having fun.
You're gonna have to build a pool in the backyard soon.
Oh,
I think.
no, I'm not
You
doing
got them
that.
swimming in the creek.
That is a responsibility I do not want.
You got them swimming in the creek.
I got them chasing snakes down there.
All right, that's good.
It's a game. It's kind of like, just any other game. Sometimes you could pick the wrong snake, so I'm training them.
Be careful. Yeah.
You
be
pick the wrong
careful.
snake up, you can.
Keep the anti venom close by. You got some dangerous snakes down there. Well, we'll talk to you later, Bob. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time.
Till next time. Bye.